An aerial assault on Iran is being considered by Washington, and this from the White House press secretary, who says that the U.S. will not hesitate to use the opportunities at its disposal.
I think one thing President Trump is very good at is always keeping all of his options on the table, and airstrikes would be one of the many options that are on the table for the commander-in-chief. Diplomacy is always the first option for the president.
And that's as the Iranian foreign minister has accused the United States and Israel of orchestrating deadly violence inside his country. Abbas Araghchi says that the recent unrest is part of a broader, externally planned campaign to destabilize the Islamic Republic.
We possess much proof and many documents which indicate the involvement of both the U.S. and Israel in this terrorist act. From our perspective, what has happened in the past 3 days, from January 8th to the 10th, is a continuation of the 12-day war. The planning was made outside of the country to drag chaos into Iran. From the 8th until the 10th of January, we have witnessed the entry of terrorists and terrorist agents and groups on the scene. The goal was to increase the number of killings. Why? Because Mr. Trump, the U.S. president, has said that if people get killed, he will come and intervene. Those terrorist agents who have entered are using ISIS methods and have started carrying out actions that are difficult to talk about. They have beheaded some people, including police forces. They even burned some individuals alive.
A warning that this report contains disturbing images. Now, the Iranian foreign minister released footage that he said showed rioters setting fires and even fatally beating a policeman. Dozens of Iranian security forces have been killed since the chaos erupted in December 2028. Now, the country has declared a national period of mourning. The mainstream media is not showing you images such as these, as tens of thousands have gathered in Iran to support the country's leadership and denounce the riots and the foreign powers instigating them.
Our message to the U.S. and Israel is that they should not interfere with other countries. Everyone can handle their own domestic issues.
We came to prove to our enemies that we are united, and they have miscalculated. The reality is that we will never compromise our security for anything. The people of Iran must consider other countries such as Syria, Libya, and others, and be aware that our main goal must be our security.
And at the very same protest, Iranian parliament member called the American president, quote, delusional for considering an attack on Iran. And that's after Trump said that Washington might have to intervene. And if Tehran retaliates, then the response will be like no other.
If they do that, we will hit them at levels that they've never been hit before. And they won't even believe it. I have options that are so strong. So, I mean, if they did that, it'll be met with a very, very powerful force.
Trump is delusional. Don't believe the lies they tell you. We will not move over the blood of our people. The defenders of Iran will give you a lesson you will never forget.
Well, the demonstrations, which began on December 28 by a group of merchants and shopkeepers in Tehran Grand Bazaar over the falling value of the Iranian national currency against the US dollar on the open market, initially went on peacefully, and the protesters in Tehran, which were later joined by citizens across the country, called on the Iranian government to take practical measures to modify the country's economic policies to address the people's economic grievances and improve the livelihood of the public. But as days passed by, in a number of provincial cities and towns, the protests turned violent, and in some cases security forces were attacked and killed, and also civilians were also killed, and cars were burned and public properties were damaged in certain areas and towns like in Ilam and Jar Mahal and Bakhtiyari provinces. Also, videos circulated around showing gunmen out on the streets among the public fire that secured the forces. But the peak of the unrest and riots were on Thursday night when, in an orchestrated move by, according to Iranian officials, foreign-backed individuals and terrorist groups. The Iranian capital and many Iranian cities and towns experienced a sort of terrorist attacks under the pretext of protest. Groups of what Iranian officials described as foreign-backed and trained individuals set fire to a number of mosques, killed security forces, fired at civilians at close distance, burned public buses, and set fire to over 20 houses. They also attacked banks. In such orchestrated riots and terrorist acts, a nurse was burned to death. Also, a 3-year-old girl was shot dead while she was in her father's arm. Also, heads of a couple of security forces were blown up after being severely beaten to death by trained and foreign-backed rioters and terrorist elements. Until Thursday night, the Iranian police tried to show restraint, but when such a chaos happened with the aim of creating insecurity and pushing the country towards violence, police and security forces intervened strongly with the aim of protecting the lives of ordinary people and defending the lives of its personnel, as well as protecting the public properties. As Iranian security officials had earlier warned that such violence and riots had been guided and supported from abroad, and that the foreign intelligence services were using social media and internet to manage and guide its elements and promote violence and unrest. Internet was shut down in Iran as of Thursday night for the Iranian police to be able to control the situation and curb the promotion of violence. And still, internet is down across the country, and the nation is experiencing internet blackout. Well, with the interference of the security forces, the situation is now fully under control. And in the past 2 nights, Iran has experienced relatively calm nights in most of cities and towns. On Monday, millions of Iranians from different walks of life took to the streets of Tehran and all cities and towns across the nation to condemn the brutal acts of terrorism in the past several days. All the participants said they have protest over the economic grievances, but will never support riots and unrest, and believe that it is the work of the enemies of Iran to create insecurity in the country. Now, as violent riots in Iran seem to tone down, U.S. President Donald Trump says he will, quote, hit Iran as never before if it attacks U.S. sites. That comes a day after Iran's Parliament Speaker Mohammad Mosaddegh warned that the U.S. and Israel could be targets if U.S. strikes Iran. That was in response to Trump's repeated aggressive statements that the U.S. is ready to help protesters. Meanwhile, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has said that the U.S. and Israel are fueling the fire of unrest and violence in the country.
These are not protesters, they are violent agitators. Protest is the right of the people, and we are obliged to respond to their protests. But unrest and attacks on public places, setting fire to mosques, burning the Book of God, this is clearly a plan by the United States and Israel. The people can see it. This is Israel speaking of humanity, while at the same time inflicting such suffering on human beings.
Meanwhile, Israel, as the closest ally of the United States, is openly voicing support for the unrest in Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has expressed his support for what he calls the struggle of the Iranian people for freedom.
Israel is closely monitoring the events unfolding in Iran. The protests for freedom have spread throughout the country. The people of Israel and the entire world stand in awe of the immense bravery of Iran's citizens. Israel supports their struggle for freedom and firmly condemns the mass killings of innocent civilians. We all hope that the Persian nation will soon be liberated from the yoke of tyranny. And when that day comes, Israel and Iran will once again be faithful partners in building a future of prosperity and peace for both nations.
Well, Iran's Prosecutor General's office has issued a firm warning that individuals or groups inside the country who support or coordinate with anti-Iranian movements abroad, especially those involved in promoting violence, would face prosecution. The office emphasized that the national security and public order remain the top priorities of the judiciary and law enforcement authorities. Well, at the same time, Iran's cyberspace police announced that it is closely monitoring online activities and the role of foreign-based networks attempting to fuel unrest through social media platforms. Officials said certain online channels and accounts linked to foreign intelligence services and opposition groups are being investigated for spreading misinformation and inciting violence. So far, authorities report that the situation is in most areas and cities across the country is calm, with local life resuming under normal conditions. However, security forces remain on alert, and the government says it will continue to monitor developments closely to ensure peace and stability across the country.
And closer home, Russia has revealed key specifics about multiple missile strikes it conducted against Ukraine on Friday. RT